So what are some of the emerging trends, and how are we going to ensure that we cope up with the emerging trends so that they don't affect what we do in businesses or what we do as managers in our day-to-day activities? So one of the critical emerging issue that is very common is globalization. So when we talk about globalization, we are talking about businesses and how you can be able to expand your operation across the globe. Remember, the world has been classified as a global village. And one of the reasons as to why it has been called a global village is because of technology, which is really changing and transforming the way we do things. Remember, nowadays you can do business with people across the globe. You can be in Kenya today and you can be doing business with a person who is in China, for example, or you can be doing business with a person who is in America. So the world has been reduced into a global village, and this is as a result of globalization, which plays a very critical role in shaping industries today. And that is why most companies have really tried their level best to expand their businesses. A good example is KCB, which is expanding, and I think they are going to Rwanda to do business. Other companies like Equity are really looking at other markets and how they are going to ensure that they cross those borders. Other multinationals are doing a good job. For example, DHL is doing a great job. And with DHL, you can find it in any part of the world. If you go to a certain country, you'll always see DHL there. So it means that you can do business across different continents, across different countries, and at the same time, you'll be doing a great job in expanding your market and increasing your profitability. Then the other emerging trend that is very common is digital transformation. This is as a result of technology, which has led to digital transformation. How has it improved digital transformation? Remember, we are in an era where technology is a must for companies. And for your company to grow, you must ensure that at the end of the day, you are taking into consideration technology, which is very, very critical. And companies are on the forefront of implementing artificial intelligence. And that is why sometimes you are encouraged to go and learn on issues to do with artificial intelligence. Then we're also talking about cloud. This is where you are able to, just a minute. So we are talking about the cloud. And most companies, what they have done nowadays, they have been able to invest in technology. That is why you no longer need a flash disk or an external hard disk when you are storing your data. What you just need is a password and maybe a username, and you're able to store everything on cloud. A good example is the OneDrive. OneDrive is from Microsoft. So once you have the OneDrive password and everything, you can easily store your documents on the cloud. Another good example is Gmail. So every person who has an account with Gmail is normally given 15 GB of storage space so that they can be able to store their data for free. So once you finish the 15 GB, then you can now buy the other GB so that you can continue storing your data. Then we're also looking at big data. Big data is where organizations are really dealing with a lot of information. And this information can emanate from systems that the organization have been able to install. For example, if your organization is using a system, once in a while or every time you interact with big data. So you are using the big data to be able to analyze or to predict the market and look at what the future old. So as a manager, you need to understand how are you going to manipulate the big data in order for it to give you information that is critical for doing your analysis on the future. Then on digital transformation, we're also looking at automation. This is where you find that an organization has decided to automate all the systems. For example, you just need a system that is a workable system. A good example of a system is an ERP system, an enterprise resource planning system. This is a system that has different modules. So it can have the marketing module, it can have the procurement module, and all these modules are linked together so that if you're in procurement, you can be able to work hand in hand with people in HR. You can be able to work hand in hand with people in production. So it is very, very critical for you to automate all your systems. A good example that I want to use is the Huduma Center. The government decided that they are going to automate all the processes. And that is why if today you want a service, you only need to have a password on eCitizen, and you'll be able to access the different services that the government is offering. Another emerging issue that is very important is called remote and hybrid work. During coronavirus, remember, most companies were affected, and companies decided to come up with a policy that allowed employees to work from home. So you can either work remotely, you don't need to go to work, or you can decide to work in a hybrid kind of system, so that once in a while you go to the office and try to look at how best you can maximize your potential when you are in the office. So this is an emerging issue because we are trying to have flexible working hours or working models for employees so that employees feel that they are going to realize their full potential. Because the moment you start micromanaging your employees, then it feels very difficult for them to maximize their potential. But if you leave them to work independently and autonomously, then they can be able to maximize their potential. Another emerging issue that is very important is the issue of sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, we are looking at three kinds of sustainability. So the first one is, just a minute, I draw. So when we talk about sustainability, we are talking about the three P's of sustainability. So here we are talking about the planet. So we have economic sustainability. So we have environmental sustainability. And the last one is social sustainability. So that when we talk about environmental sustainability, we are looking at the first P. So the first P under the three P's of sustainability is the planet. Then the second P is the people. And the third P, which is under economic, is the profits. So what do we mean when we talk about environmental sustainability? This is where a company decides to produce products, and these products are not going to harm the users of the product. So they are not going to harm the users. So that anything that you're going to produce, then it means it is not going to affect the environment in any way. You're not going to emit carbon to the environment, therefore affecting the environment and the people who are living in that environment. Then we are talking about social sustainability. This is where the company decides to look for the welfare of the employees, so that if you're working for that organization, then the organization will look at your well-being. And that is why they created what is called a work-life balance. Work-life balance. So that you don't just think of work every day, you think of how you are going to increase your productivity by balancing your work, your life. Then we're also looking at issues to do with mental wellness. Mental wellness. Organizations are really taking care of their employees. And sometimes you find you have counselors in your workplace, so that in the event you feel that you're not well mentally, you go and talk to somebody. And at least when you talk to somebody, then you feel you have a listening ear. Then we have economic sustainability. So this is about profits. Are you able to sustain your business in the future? So that anything that you are doing today, are you going to experience cases where you increase your profits? Or are you going to decide that the future is going to be very, very bright? So you need to look at that in that context. So sustainability is all about survival in future. So you're looking at the future generation and how best can ensure that you cater for the future generation. So another thing or another emerging issue is workforce diversity. This is where you're looking at different cultures and trying to incorporate those cultures into what you do every day. You're also looking at multi-generational teams so that you are able to do what is called succession planning. So that at the end of the day, remember, you're not going to work forever. It will reach a time that you have to retire from your work. So when you retire, what happens to the others who are coming behind you? And that is why we are talking about succession planning. So you need to ensure that you look at the future and how you're going to transform or you're going to transition from the already existing employees, the new employees who are coming to the organization. Then we're also looking at other areas like ethics and corporate governance. When we talk about ethics, we are talking about morals. What is good? What are you supposed to do as an employee in that organization? You're supposed to uphold your integrity. So when you talk about ethics, we are talking about morals. You need to be accountable in what you do. You need to be transparent in what you do, so that in the event you make a mistake, it is upon you to say, indeed, I'm the one who made this mistake, and you fix it, rather than transferring the risk to another person. Then another issue is the issue of corporate governance. And when we talk about corporate governance, we are talking about leadership, the leadership of that organization. And they always say, if you want to know whether an organization is doing best or is doing good, you need to look at their leaders. How are their leaders behaving? If their leaders are really behaving well, then there's a possibility that that organization is doing a good job. But the opposite is also true. When you find a leader that is corrupt, then it means everything in that organization is corrupt. So governance is very, very important. Then we're also looking at rapid innovation. And rapid innovation, we are looking at creativity. And that is why you find most organizations normally have innovation hubs. And the work of this innovation hub is to ensure that employees who are well talented are able to maximize their potential. You are given an opportunity to think and come up with new ideas on how you are going to increase productivity within the organization. So, and one of the critical areas about innovation is the issue to do with technology. And technology has assisted people to be more creative and come up with different things that will assist or find better ways of doing their job. Then we also have another emerging issue, is the changing customer expectation. What do you think that has made customer expectations to change over time? What do you think has made the customer expectation to change over time? So we can start with Lucy. What do you think has made the customer expectations to change over time? Lucy Ishuhinwe. Lucy.
Yes, teacher, I can hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me. Class. So what do you think has made expectations to change?
Maybe due to the improvement.
Just try. Yeah?
Maybe due to the improvement in technology.
Yes.
So the expectations and their demands are high. The expectations becomes high. Like they think their services will be more efficient. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, you don't know. Veronica.
Yes, Mwalimu.
You can try. What do you think has made it change customer expectation?
Can I try?
Yeah, you can.
There's a lot of information about products nowadays, globally and internationally. So unapata client may have so many information. Thus the expectation will be higher.
Okay. So you realize that the customer of today is an informed customer. Before you even buy a product, you have to Google first so that you understand what is this product going to bring to my health. For example, if you walk into a chemist today and you are given medicine, you don't just take the medicine. First of all, you need to Google and understand, what is this that I'm taking? Is it beneficial to me, or it is going to bring side effects? So when you look at all that, you realize that the customer's expectations are really changing. And that is why customers already know their rights today. So you cannot mistreat the customer, unlike before where customers did not know their right. And that is why if you walk into a supermarket and you are not treated well, I'm telling you, you are going to complain, and they have to listen to you. Otherwise, there's a possibility that that organization is going to close as a result of your complaint. So you need to basically understand the customer expectation and make sure you surpass those expectations so that when the customer comes to your premise, the customer not only feels good, but he also feels satisfied at the end of the day. So what are the challenges that are posed by these emerging trends? So what are the challenges that are posed by globalization? The first one is cultural barriers. You realize that we have different cultures. For example, what happens in Kenya is totally different from what happens in China. So you might go to China and they have their own culture. And this might affect how you look at your organization. So you need to understand what is their culture and how well am I going to traverse those cultures. The other thing is about trade risks. So for example, if you go to a country like the US, they normally use the US dollars. And sometimes, the fluctuation of currency might affect your business. So you might end up experiencing what is called a trade risk as a result of the fluctuation in currency. or the different policies that are in those countries. So it becomes difficult for you to be able to do business. Then we're also looking at the complexity of the supply chain. And when we talk about supply chain, we are looking at the end-to-end movement of products from the supplier up to the time the product reaches the customer. So what is supply chain? Supply chain is all about movement of product. Let me just give you a scenario here. When you talk about complexity of supply chain, we are talking about supply chain. So we have different farms here. We have different farms here. We have the farm, we have the supplier, and we have the customer on the other end. So let's assume the farm here is a manufacturing farm. Any manufacturing farm that you know, let's use the example of Bidco. Kama unajua Bidco hapa Bidco unajua? Unafanya gani?
Bidco.
Inauza yogurt eh? Yes.
Bidco inauza mafuta ya kupika na sabuni.
Oh, sabuni. Good, good. So that is Bidco. Then we have a supplier here. Let's assume they are making sunflower oil. So what is the raw material for sunflower oil? So the raw material for sunflower oil is sunflower flour. So sunflower is the supplier. So this is the major supplier for Bidco. But this supplier has also other suppliers here. So let's assume the supplier has three other suppliers. So this is supplier of the supplier. One. So then you have the supplier. Two. We have the supplier. Three. We also have the supplier of the supplier of the supplier. So we don't want to go all through to the farmer. So let's assume we have a farmer. We have different farmers. So a farmer, another farmer here, another farmer here. So you can understand that complexity. So we have another farmer here. So all these farmers collect the sunflower, takes it to the supplier of this supplier. Then the supplier of the supplier consolidates all these raw material to the manufacturer here. The manufacturer is Bidco. So the work of Bidco is to do what is called value addition. So Bidco will do value addition. The sunflower, so that it produces what is called sunflower oil. So once they do value addition, they will pack the sunflower, they will label it, they will pack it, and sell it to a customer. Is the customer in our case a retailer? Let's assume retailer. The retailer is Naivas, or Quickmart.
Then wholesalers.
Carrefour, or the wholesaler. So we have other customers, the customer of the customer. The customer. So this is a person who is going to buy the sunflower oil in Naivas supermarket. then he's going to start another process. Maybe the sunflower oil is a raw material for another product. Now, or maybe you have your own household, so you are going to buy the sunflower oil so that you become a consumer. And remember, the consumer is normally the final user of product. So this movement, remember we have a movement here. So we have the flow of product, flow of material. So the flow moves like that. But we also have the flow of information, which cuts across all those. So this is an example of a supply chain. I don't want to go into details because we still have other processes here. Like we have the outbound logistics, inbound logistics, inbound logistics. We have outbound logistics. I don't want to go all to those details. So this is a typical example of the complexity of the supply chain. So when you talk about globalization, then when you look at that web, sometimes it becomes a challenge to you as a business institution. Then when we talk about digital transformation, what are some of the challenges? We are talking about high cost of installation. It's not easy to install a cybersecurity system. And sometimes the initial cost is very, very high. And every time you install this system, people will always resistance to change. They don't want to change because of the status quo. So you are very comfortable where you are and you don't want to implement change. Most people say, hey, this system is going to bring issues, so we don't need it. Then we also have the issue of cybersecurity. This is a very common area. And nowadays we are experiencing a lot of cybersecurity issues where people want to hack the systems and defraud the company, huge sums of money. There was a data that was given, I think, this week, where the central bank governor is talking about up to, I think, 1.2 billion loss in terms of money to hackers. So you can imagine all that, 1.2 billion. That is a lot of money. Then when we talk about remote work, what are the challenges? We are looking at how are you going to monitor productivity? Because someone is seated in the comfort of their house. Are you able to monitor these people when they are working? Yes, they are working from home, but how are you going to ensure that they really work? Are you going to put performance parameters, or what are you going to do? Then we are talking about team cohesion. Sometimes it's not easy to bring the teams together because people are working remotely. So if you're working remotely, it becomes difficult to bring the group together so that they can work in one team. Then the other issue is the issue of data security. How sure are you with your data? When you give the employees access to your systems, are they going to use that data to their own advantage? So you also need to look at that. Then another thing is sustainability. And some of the challenges is the compliance cost, where most organizations are finding it very difficult to comply with the issues to do with sustainability. And remember, companies nowadays need to act in a way that is sustainable. So they need to balance profits and responsibility. And that is why we normally do some audits more often than not on issues to do with sustainability. When we talk about diversity, we are looking at the risk of conflict, where people might end up conflicting in their place of work. Or sometimes you might experience cases where people are discriminated or biasness, or sometimes communication barrier. You might find a person speaking in another language that you don't understand, yet you have decided to expand your business. to go to China so that you can find new markets for your product. But when it comes to communication, it becomes a challenge, not only to you, but to the organization. Then we have ethics. And ethics is all about corruption. And remember, corruption is a problem, not only to the individuals who are working in that organization, but also to countries. So sometimes you might want to do good, but corruption comes calling and you cannot avoid it. Data misuse is another thing where you misuse data because of so you misuse your data and you end up not getting value at the end of the day. Another thing is the ethical use of AI. Some people have really misused AI. There was a time I read on one of the dailies that there is a student who did 7 assignments within less than 30 minutes. So you can imagine. So as much as AI is good, but people are really misusing the AI. Then we have, in terms of innovation, we are looking at the pressure for continuous adaptation, where people are really forced to adapt to technology, which is rapid. Yes?
How is that misusing AI doing assignment and using AI?
Because you'll be doing a shoddy work. Huh? You don't want to take time to concentrate.
And no research.
You just want to finish. Yeah? You just want to finish the assignment. So you see that one is misusing as much as it is helping you to pass the exams, but what value are you adding to yourself? So once you pass, what next? I think I've answered your question.
Marimu, is it unethical or ethical use?
Misuse is unethical. Misuse.
Mm.
The misuse, eh?
Mm.
So if you misuse something, then it means it is not okay. A good example, let me use an example that you can relate with. Imagine in your place of work where you take photocopying papers, so you misuse them because you feel you have a right to use those photocopying papers. Yes, you have a right, but you are really misusing them. You can print a whole book, 900 pages, when no one is watching you. So you see that is misusing. Tax. Then customer expectation. Hope I've answered you.
Oh, because in the notes it's ethical use of AI. So I was wondering, is it ethical or unethical?
Unethical use, unethical.
Mm.
Unethical. Yes. So you can change that. So when we talk about unethical use of AI, then innovation, we've talked about continuous adaptation. So you are forced to adapt quickly, yet you've not even maximized the already existing technology, and you're going to a new technology. So you find that the cycle is very small, and you don't really get the full satisfaction that is required. So innovation could be good, but really people are chasing this technology. So when, for example, a new phone comes into the market, you want to go with that trend. Yet you still have the already new phone that you bought last month. So sometimes it becomes, so the pressure is too much, and it affects everything about what you do. So what is the difference between the iPhone? No, you are saying iPhone. So what is unique about that iPhone? Which feature is different? The camera. So what does the camera do? Itachukua mpaka next year. It can take a picture up to the future. Sure. Oh my, oh my. Any question? Any question before we proceed? Unajua in Africa watu wanakimbiza upepo sana. Bad. So how then do you cope with emerging trends? So how do you cope with technology? So number one is to embrace technology. Whether you like it or not, you must be able to understand how to use technology. And remember, technology is an enabler in many things. If today we didn't have technology, it means that every other person should have been in this class physically. So some of you could get late to this class, but because of technology, you can sit in the comfort of your house and attend the class. So you must be able to invest in digital tools. Organizations nowadays are really investing in artificial intelligence, and they're also encouraging their employees to try their level best to at least learn some basic skills in artificial intelligence. Then the other thing is about promoting continuous learning. Learning is a continuous process. And once you learn, make sure that you share the knowledge. Knowledge is good when you share. And I know some of you in this class don't share knowledge. So if you have a book, you keep it to yourself. Even if you're not reading the book, you don't want to share. So the time somebody asks you for the book, that is the time you want to say that, I'm reading. So knowledge is good when you share. And remember, you learn a lot when you share knowledge. Upskill. Make sure you go to class, learn something different, learn something new every day, and become a better person in your life. Then adopt flexible work policies. Make sure you embrace the hybrid kind of model where you can work from anywhere. You also need to look at performance metrics and how best you can improve your performance or increase your performance. So as much as you're working with the flexible work hours, make sure you're also doing your best. Then another thing is to integrate sustainability. So companies nowadays are focusing more on sustainability, and they are looking at how are they going to survive in the future. So sustainability is all about ensuring that you operate in a way that you can sustain yourself in the future. And another thing is about corporate social responsibility reporting. As much as you're doing what you're doing in organization, you also need to look at the society, the community. Are you able to give back to society? Then foster diversity and inclusion. Make sure you include every other person in that organization. Come up with policies that are going to include each and every member of that organization. You can also come up with programs that encourage mentorship among employees, and you can also improve in terms of training more to understand what is your core business or your objective as a firm. Then strengthen ethics. So you need to ensure that you have a code of conduct that is working and that is implemented. And each and every member of that organization has implemented those activities. Then compliance and leadership, ensure that you embrace leadership and you uphold integrity in all aspects of your work. Encourage innovation. Make sure you support creativity, research and development, and partnerships. Nowadays, we don't compete, but we complement each other. So make sure you complement. Even in class, don't compete. Complement so that each and every person can pass the exams. Talk for a distinction, so make sure you get with the others. And the other thing is to maintain a customer-centric approach. This is where you personalize service. So make sure you know your customers, and by knowing your customers, you give your customers the best. And you also need to gather feedback. And remember, feedback is good because feedback will help you to understand the areas of strength and the areas of weaknesses and how best you can embrace and become better and better every day. So remember, what you need to remember is that emerging issues will create both opportunities and challenges. It is not always a walk in the park. It is not always a walk in the park. So you can use the emerging issues as opportunities to discover yourself, opportunities to grow your business, opportunities to learn more. And as much as you are learning, you also need to look at what are the challenges you experience as you grow. What are the challenges you experience as you become better and better, so that you can avoid those challenges and improve. Managers must adopt strategies to remain competitive. So as a manager, you need to come up with strategies. And remember, we are talking about strategies, and we are saying strategies are there to make you competitive and to have a competitive advantage over the others in the industry. Then success lies in embracing change, innovation, and ethical leadership. So make sure you avoid the status quo and always embrace change. Remember, change is the only constant, and whether you like it or not, you have to change. So that is the end of this presentation. Any question? Any question? So we shall start with Meshach. Meshach.
Meshach is on transit, sir.
Okay. Pius. How many Pius?